to Bennington College, and that's when I really began to see what dance could be. I began to understand how people made a life of it, made a life with it. This was in the early 70s, so it was very hippie, post-hippie, and so everything was very anti-training, anti-ballet. There was a woman named Martha Whitman who had danced with Limon, and she taught a combination of the Limon, yoga, ballet. She just drew on, the way people teach technique now. She just drew on everything from her history. The main thing that came out of that place for me was a tutorial with Judith Dunn. I don't know if you know Judith Dunn. She was Judson Years, but she died very young. People don't know her as well. But she did a tutorial called Dance a Day, and it was literally this. We made a dance every day, September to June, Monday through Friday, and we had no time in the class to make anything. We just had to show up and show, and she gave us no starting points, no themes, no ideas, no methods, nothing, or certainly anything that I remember. And so it was terrifying, and I think in about a month or 6 weeks, I sort of felt like I'd run through everything that I had thought up to feel safe in this class, and then I really had, I was just really empty, and that's when it really began to get interesting. And that class just really rearranged all my ideas about how dance gets made, and the dailiness of it was really the biggest influence in this. Well, the way I have come to characterize it, and the way I talk about it now in teaching, is that making is thinking. So that if making is a form of thought, you don't need a plan. Of course, you come to it with previous thoughts and images and so on. You're never coming in with nothing going on. But that's precisely why you can simply go and begin to work. So this is what I promote in my teaching. It's a metaphor. Yeah, it's a metaphor for several things. It's a metaphor for what I was saying about ideas. You don't have to search for your ideas. You need to begin to make decisions, make actions, and your ideas will be made manifest through that. So it introduces that. It introduces the strategy, the idea of strategy, and that people do this very easily and with pleasure, and I think part of the reason that is because it's just some stuff we're carrying around in our bag, and it feels so unimportant. But you take the same thing and try to make dance with it, and you can't, suddenly you're shut down, because the very importance of it shuts you down, So how do you, again, in a very practical sense, how do you proceed in the face of that? So the idea of, getting yourself what you need to make your best work, rather than getting stuck in some idea of, it's these myths, and these assumptions about how it's going to take place. So that's the way I begin also to talk about outwitting yourself, making friends with your psychology, and also about beginning to understand what assumptions you're bringing to not just the work you're going to make, but to the process and how the process has to happen. So then I think it can, the idea of strategies can then very much go into another thing that I like to pay attention to in my teaching, which is sort of inviting a better awareness of what your own assumptions are, and doing that, inviting with an understanding that that's going to go on your whole life. It's not, again, something you got to take care of before you're ready. I mean, at a certain period, there was an assumption that about methods, that material would be made and I needed to make it on my body and then teach it to you and transfer it to your body, but then somehow it also has to become yours in order for you to really truly do it. And then and then by the time we get there, we've worked on this movement, and then I'm reluctant to give it up because we've worked all these hours on it, and then I also can't see it very well. And so I wanted to just bypass this at a certain point in my making.
No, you're not blind, but you can't see what I'm feeling around you. Well within my words, listen to your fears operating. Well within my words, listen to your fears operating. Well within my words, listen to your fears operating.
It comes up a lot because it's I don't know what the word I want, where it's rubber stamped, it's given approval by a lot of our community, I think a lot of teachers say, why did you make that decision? And I think a lot of presenters and producers and funders want to, why do you work this way? Why you, so that the questions of what it will be about get related to the questions of justifying it, and that the validity is then going to exist in analysis, in language. And I try and reverse that question and say, if you are in what I call conversation with your dance, then you are not knowing why you do XYZ. You are doing XYZ to find out what XYZ is about.
Well within my words, listen to your fears operating. Well within my words, listen to your fears operating.
For example, I have particular exercises I do that are sort of designed to get at what I mean by this, which is to create an image or create a segment of something or create a movement event, and to look at it not with the question of do I like it, but with the question of how does it act on me, and the answer to how does it act on me can also be a response to it. So having seen that, I feel the need for this. And again, I don't know why. As I go on further and make another 5,000 decisions, I will begin to see why. But for the moment, I can look at a segment of movement and sort of interview it. It's almost like, what do you want now, dance? I think about how people from Germany during the war went to Black Mountain College and ran up against John Cage and Merce Cunningham, and Cage was coming from Eastern philosophy, and those things met. The European mind was then influenced by the, what would you call it, the Buddhist, I see a relationship between Buddhist, Taoism and modernism, and the interest in the thing as it is, the interest in the redness of the paint, the interest in the flatness of the canvas, and the interest in Mercer's interest in the body communicates. You don't have to, it doesn't need to be filled, it doesn't need to be informed. You make art out of that. And I see myself in a direct legacy from that. I mean, teaching forces you to articulate what you think, and then teaching in Europe forced me to understand it and articulate it, and then I was able to choose it. Now I feel like I have chosen the ways that I work and the things that I believe in, and they haven't, they're not so different, but I have the awareness of them. So, and that's good for teaching.
By the continuously moving eyeball and the eyeball sedated, soothed, disallow the surface of the air. The eyeball is a fish whose back glides under the meniscus of water. The eyeball has fought.
To me, what's so interesting about dance, or what I love about art, if I can use the A word, is that it gives me access to the interior of somebody else's mind in a way that nothing else does. No social way of knowing, no workaday way of knowing, but that's not going to happen if you're imposing your already known idea on it. Then it's an idea traveling from your mind to my mind through this medium, which is very different from the structures of your mind, being made to some degree visible to me. That's like, wow, I think that's extraordinary,
From where I lie, here in the center of this room, to the boundary of my world, as I begin my slow, stumbling return to the unconscious.
The stealing thing, it's not like I want to say don't have any ego, don't want credit, don't solve this problem, but it's also it goes back to what I said, is the use of the form is to ask questions about the form and therefore about other stuff. And I think, you hear people say this, well, put your questions in your work, but again, what does that mean in a really practical way, but this, this stealing and wrecking thing, is an example also of like, let's take this question and look at it, I mean, if I steal from you, do people look at it and say, oh, you stole, probably not, but, because I'm going to misperceive it, I'm going to, of course you can do it like an impersonation, and then it's a whole different, but I'm talking about like, if you do it in a more subtle way, trying to steal from you what I see in you playing this game, the structures, the way you think, trying to steal that, and clearly I can't, so it's just a way of like provoking, using a question to provoke more questions. These things don't sort of exist in in isolation. It's like, I'm going along, doing my work, responding to my circumstances. My circumstances are, of course, involved in the circumstances of the community and the world, and so my response is a response also to this, and I didn't see that link, but it makes sense that it would be there. And I think, I don't know, I'll know a lot more about it in a couple of years than I do now, because the way that I think about what I'm going to make is very imagistic, is very just like strategies, solutions, to finding a situation that feels like I can proceed in this. And then oftentimes the implications of it become clear much later, after the fact. I think it comes through an indirection, but I've also always been interested in sort of inviting collaboration with circumstances, and just partly because I feel the futility of trying to create an ideal situation, but partly also because it's something about, it's related to everything else in my work, that I don't think like I must make blah 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 and therefore I need these things. I think this is what I've got. Okay, I'm going to make something out of that set of circumstances. That question causes me to think about Duchamp in a way, because I think, it's like, with the ready-mades, you take, if you take the actual making of the thing out of it, what else can you take out of it, So, and I think these questions are being asked in, in dance now, what else can you take out? You took out, you took out the story, you took out the expression, you took out, the Judson took out the this and this and this and this. And I think it's good, to always be redefining, what it is. My problem with some of the questions that are going on is that they are buying into the body-mind division. I feel like some of the questions are being asked very much from an outside of the work point of view. I don't feel some of the time that they're arrived at through the work. And I think there's, there's a, there's always pressures, there's always, but I think the current pressures, the current fashion pressures are to also buy into a kind of notion of progress. And I don't see that anymore. I feel like, the sort of narrative art sort of got exploded somewhere in the 50s, 60s, and now we're in strands, and the strands are all of different philosophies, but I feel that I see people very anxious to be the next question, to place themselves on this line, So I like the questions. I sometimes don't like the reasons for the questions, but I think everybody also gets defensive in the face of those kinds of art, that sort of art world phenomena and how it operates, So I think I have a little of that too, a little bit of like, because I'm of an age where I'm committed to what I'm doing, but I think I really see the economics like working their way through and leading to these questions as well, you know. I mean, I'm working on a series of very almost no movement, small pieces that came from very much from economics, because I lost my space with my studio and the very thing that I needed to have, and I thought, well, you know, I have to. And so now I have a one-bedroom apartment. And I thought, well, even if I take everything out of it, it's, you know, still it's like tiny, and that's not going to work. And so I thought, well, I have to make some other kind of art that I can make, because I'm feeling too displaced and too homeless, and I have to stay at home, you know. And so I thought, well, you know, what if I get people over and I make something in the room with the furniture, on it, under it, and open it. And then I just pick up the room and put the room in the theater. So that's what I did, you know. And, you know, so the room gets in the theater, and it's very small, and it feels out of place, you know, and this is really a part of what it is. And, you know, and that's, you know, it certainly would never have occurred to me without the, you know, economic